Hi, everyone. I have a strange question for you. Have any of you ever had this experience where a person delivered a very meaningful or deep message to you? And then in hindsight, it made you wonder, was this person actually a real person? Or was this person a messenger from beyond? I've had this happen to me several times in life, but the one I'm going to talk about today happened to me when I was 9 years old. This was 1980. The reason why I chose it is because it taught me about manifestation long before I even knew what the heck to call this thing that happened, and long before I knew what manifestation was. Definitely long before The Secret and Law of Attraction, Esther Hicks, all that stuff was in vogue. What happened was this was spring of 1980. So I would have been 10 later that year, but I was still nine, halfway through the third grade. And we were just leaving Selfridge Air National Guard base in Michigan. Dad was active duty Air Force, and he got stationed at an Air National Guard base because they needed active duty air traffic controllers. Well, his next duty station was going to be at King Salmon, Alaska. It was a remote assignment, which meant my sister, mom, and I could not go with him. But he did know that after he was done with his year at King Salmon, he would be stationed at March Air Force Base in Riverside, California. So he moved us to Riverside. Just a couple of years before that, his parents, my grandparents, had moved from El Sereno, California, a suburb of Los Angeles, to Riverside. So he put us in, rented a little house, probably about 2 to 3 short blocks away from my grandparents. And my sister and I were really, really excited because now we were going to get to see our grandparents every single day. Whereas before it was like maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, whenever we came back home on leave. Well, this was my first time of being immersed into civilian culture. We were not living close to the base, which was actually the address is Riverside, but at the time, the area that the base is in was called Sunnymead. That's how old I am. Now it's Moreno Valley. So how it went from sunny to Moreno dark, I don't know. But we were not living close to the base. So none of these kids had really experienced a military brat before, and they weren't sure what to make of me because they had all grown up with each other. They were with each other since the time they were babies. They went shopping at the same places. They went to the same churches. They went to kindergarten with each other and were traveling in the same classes with each other. And so I didn't have any friends in the beginning, and I was shy and very introverted naturally anyway. But before, I never had problem with being a military brat because all kids at some point are the new kid. Not here. So I was very lonely when I started school at Monroe Elementary, halfway through the third grade. And I spent a lot of time drawing in class because the things that they were learning at the time, I had already learned in Michigan. I was already way ahead of them. So I was bored, did a lot of drawing. And at the time, I was doing a lot of drawings of what I thought Hawaii would look like. Because ever since I saw the Brady Bunch episode where they went to Hawaii, that was it. I had to go there. I felt like this was a paradise that needed me and I needed it. It was a few weeks after I started school there that Monroe was having what they called an art show. All it was is they just wanted kids to draw or paint pictures and put them up in the classroom. And then they would have groups of visitors come through, parents could come and take in all the beautiful art we've created. So I was excited about that because I was also an artist at the time. I'd been taking art classes, art, I can't talk, art classes since I was 5. And so when the day came, I put up all my pictures. We had these like easels where we could put our pictures up on our the tables that we shared with other kids. And I put up all my pictures of Hawaii. Classroom was huge. It was like almost like a double classroom because they had a partition, but they had pulled the partition. It was just like all one big classroom. And there were a lot of people in the classroom at the time. So I was just standing by my art and I saw a group walk in. It was several men in suits and several ladies dressed really nice. And to me, they looked like other teachers or perhaps even administrative people. And I had never seen them before. So I was watching them and I noticed that at the end of the group was an elderly woman. She probably looked like she was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. What I remembered about her was that she was so beautiful. Her hair was silver and it was short, but it was like perfectly poofed and done. Her makeup was flawless. She wore delicate beads around her neck. I believe they were pearls. I think I remember pearls. And she had a very soft lavender cardigan on. I believe the blouse was white. I don't remember what color the skirt was, but I do remember her heels. She had light colored heels. They were like either white or maybe a little bit off white color. And as the group traveled around, she all of a sudden turned her attention to me and she came straight for me. So I was excited because, no one had been talking to me since I started school other than my teacher. So this person was showing interest in me and I was getting a little excited. And she came and she stopped and she just stood looking and smiling at my pictures for the longest time before she finally looked at me and said, "Hi." And she goes, "What are your pictures of?" And I said, "They're Hawaii." And she goes, "Oh my." And she says, "Have you ever been to Hawaii?" And I was like, "No, but I want to go someday." And she goes, "Well, let me tell you something." And then she bent down. She, squatted down to where she was eye level with me. And she says, "I want to tell you that if you truly believe in something, if you keep drawing your pictures and you truly believe that someday you will go to Hawaii, you will go to Hawaii." And then she stood up and smiled at me and went in the direction that group of people she had walked in went. I remember looking at my pictures and going, "Okay, I believe, I believe." But then I thought, "Oh, how the heck am I supposed to get to Hawaii? I'm just a kid. I don't have any money." I started thinking in my mind, how much money do I have in my piggy bank at home? And so I went to go find her. I knew the direction she had gone because they had all walked deeper into the classroom over by where my teacher was standing. And I wanted to ask her, how was that supposed to happen? Because I'm just a kid. I don't have any money. How am I supposed to go to Hawaii? Well, as I'm walking, I'm scanning the room for her and I don't see her. I catch up to that group. And by this time, they're kind of clustered around my teacher. They're all talking with each other. And I just walk up and I interrupt them all. And I'm like, "Where is she?" And no one's listening to me because they're still talking. I was like, "Where's the lady?" I'm saying it louder this time. And they all stop and they looked at me. And I was like, "Where's the lady in the purple sweater in the heels?" And my teacher's like, "Go sit down." And I'm like, "No, but I want to know where the lady is. I have to ask her something." And my teacher's like, "I'm not going to tell you again. Go sit down at your table." And I was like, so I went, sat back at my table, but I'm still looking throughout the classroom. I cannot see her anywhere. My table was over by the door that led to outside. Never saw her go in or out. But I thought, well, maybe somehow I missed her. So I was really bummed because I really wanted to know. So let's fast forward now to the seventh grade. And this was 4 years later. I was at Shimawa Middle School, taking art classes, still drawing my pictures of what I thought Hawaii was supposed to look like. And it was always basically almost the same thing. Most people, when they would draw Hawaii, would draw beaches and ocean and coconut trees or whatever, right? No, for some reason, I kept drawing the same thing over and over, a river with vegetation growing all around it, like ferns and things, and all these trees. And I would draw all these birds within the scene. And every now and then I would, if I felt like it, put a pretty flower in there or something. Well, it was getting close to the end of seventh grade. I think this was like May of 1994, 1984. Oh, I'm trying to make myself younger. um, I was 13 at the time, would have been 14 later on. And came home from school one day. My sister was already home, and mom was like almost like jumping out of her skin. I remember she was in the kitchen and she's like, "Oh my God, just wait till your dad gets home. We've got something to tell you. We've got some great news to tell you, girls." And my sister and I are looking at each other going, and then I got excited. I was like, "Oh my God, am I finally getting a baby brother?" Because that's all I ever wanted. And I was like, "Oh, this is great if I'm getting a baby brother." And she's like, "Oh, I want to tell you guys, so bad right now." But she's like, "No, let's wait till your dad gets home." So he finally gets home from work because at this time now, by now, he's already stationed at March Air Force Base. And when he gets home, he comes in and he says, "Okay." He's like, "I have some news for you girls." And we're looking at him and he goes, "We're getting stationed at Hickam Air Force Base." And I was like, "Oh man, no baby brother." And then my sister and I are looking at each other like, "Okay." And then mom goes, "Hawaii." And I went, "What? Oh my God." And we start jumping up and down and everything. And we're like, "We're actually moving to Hawaii." And I was like, "Oh my God, wait until I tell all my friends and everything." And then my second thought after that was, that lady was right. Oh my, this was how it was supposed to happen. No, I wasn't supposed to go rob a bank because I was a kid and had no money, because that had been a thought. But I was like, oh my gosh, she was right. But this was how it was going to happen. It was going to happen through dad, because of dad, because he was in the Air Force. So that was amazing, right? But the story gets even better. And it makes me cry every time I think about it. So fast forward now, already been living in Hawaii for a little bit. This would have been 19 spring of 19. I'm going to pause for a second. I'll come back. So this would have been spring of 1987. I was a sophomore in high school. So I was 16 at the time. And I was, since my freshman year, I had been in Navy JROTC, was for all 4 years of high school at Radford in Honolulu, Hawaii. And we had this thing every spring called spring camp. And basically, what it was is for five, I think it was like 5 days out of our spring break, we would go to Schofield Army Base and we would basically play war games out there. But we were learning things too. We were living in tents, we were learning land navigation. We were doing the confidence course, which is basically a big obstacle course, but you had to figure out how to get you and your team from point A to B without touching feet on the ground. So, you're putting planks across, long distances and walking across high up in the air and doing all of these things, right? We're also learning how to rappel. Yeah, I learned how to make my own rappel seat. None of these fancy things you can just buy. No, we were a rope and a clip. you know, um, what are they called? Oh gosh, I used to sell them at military clothing. Carabiner just came to me. So, anyways, it was my sophomore year that myself and a few of my friends had the opportunity to go for a helicopter ride. I don't remember which helicopter it was, but we were really excited, right? And so we ran out there, keeping our heads low. And yeah, we made sure we had our dog tags in case we got chopped up or crashed or something, and jumped into this helicopter, and away we went. And it was when we first started taking off in the air, and it was going pretty fast. I was like, whoa. All of a sudden, the pilot turned around and smiled at us, and I realized it was a female pilot. And she kind of winked at us, and all of a sudden she did one of these, right? We're like, wow, because the side doors are open. We could see all the way down to the ground. And I thought, okay, this is going to be an amazing ride. So we were having a lot of fun. Here's where things get interesting. At one point, she takes us over the mountains in the center of the island. And I don't know, is it the Ko'olaus? It's been a lot of years, but she did one of those turns. And so we're looking straight down at the ground, and all of a sudden my heart stopped. You're not going to freaking believe what I saw. Down below was my river, the same way I had drawn it. The vegetation, the ferns, the rainforest type ferns growing down there. All the trees. I could see birds taking off from the trees because the helicopter's buzzing them. And I saw a flower too. It was at that point where it took everything I had not to freak out and not to start crying, because it hit me in that moment. Everything just came full circle for me. And I was like, that lady, I don't know who she was, but she was so right. And she brought me to this moment where my picture, the thing that I had believed in and had believed in enough, had finally manifested into form. Now, that river had always been there. Those plants and trees had always been there. But it was the most profound moment of my young life at that point, other than the repelling incident. And I'll talk about that one day too. Yeah, I actually saw my life flash before my eyes because I had an accident repelling. But when we landed and got off, my legs were a little shaky, not because of the helicopter ride, but because I was like, holy crap, what just happened up there? And that was the first time I started questioning, who the hell was this woman? This elderly woman who walked in the classroom and seemed to zero in on me, spent time with me, and then disappeared. And that was the first time I realized that I don't think she actually walked out of that classroom. I think she just disappeared when she delivered what she had to deliver. And as the years have gone on, I more and more believe that she was a messenger from beyond, teaching me in a way that I would understand what manifestation was about. Now, am I a great manifester? Oh, hell yeah. I'm great at manifesting the things I don't want because that's what I usually tend to put my focus on. Look, I can teach, but I don't follow my own advice. But it was the thing that started it all for me. And yeah, if I believe strongly enough, let me tell you what, it's not enough to say affirmations. It's not enough just to go, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, over and over again, and saying, I deserve good in my life. I deserve abundance. No, there has to be a feeling and belief behind it. And I had that belief because that lady, an adult who was older than me, and I suppose she was wiser than me, had told me this is how you do it. And so I believed her. And I had that belief behind my words, behind my drawings. So that's what that's about. I'll talk about all the other stuff another day, but for now, that's it. So, hey, I'm so glad you stuck with me. Like, subscribe, follow. What is it here? Subscribe. So take care, everybody. Love you. Bye.